Dr. Ethan Cross pressed his medical bag closer to his chest as he walked through the reinforced corridors of Facility 7. The stark fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on the metallic walls, and the distant sound of electronic locks echoing through the complex reminded him constantly of where he was, a detention center for alien prisoners of war. 3 months had passed since humanity's victory over the Zerathi Coalition, and the aftermath still felt surreal. Ethan had volunteered for this assignment against the advice of his colleagues. Most saw it as career suicide, working with those creatures as the other staff called them. But Ethan had been a battlefield medic during the war's final year, and he'd seen enough death to know that healing had to start somewhere. "New assignment, Doc," Lieutenant Hayes said, handing him a tablet as they walked. "Cell Block D, Section 12. Fair warning. This one's been difficult." Ethan scanned the basic information. Subject designation X7741. Female. Species Veltar. 1. Of the rarer coalition members. No known relatives. Captured during the siege of Centauri Station. The psychological evaluation notes made his stomach turn. Exhibits extreme fear responses. Non-cooperative. Potential danger to staff. "What kind of difficult?" Ethan asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Hayes shrugged. "Won't eat. Won't speak. Attacks anyone who gets too close. The guards have to use sonic restraints just to deliver food. Been like that for 2 weeks now." They reached the observation window of Cell 12, and Ethan's breath caught. Inside the sterile white chamber, a figure huddled in the far corner, partially hidden by shadows. She was tall, probably 6.5 feet, with an elongated, graceful frame. Her skin had a subtle, luminescent quality, pale blue-white like moonlight on water. Long, silver hair fell like a curtain around her face, but he could see the faint glow of large eyes beneath. She was trembling. "Jesus," Ethan whispered. "She's terrified." "She's dangerous," Hayes corrected. "Broke Corporal Martinez's wrist last week when he tried to move her for cleaning." Ethan watched as the alien woman, Kiravel, according to her file, pressed herself further into the corner when she noticed them at the window. Even from this distance, he could see her chest rising and falling rapidly like a trapped animal. "I want to go in," Ethan said. "Doc, I don't think she needs medical attention. Look at her." Ethan gestured toward the window. "She's malnourished, dehydrated, and in psychological distress. That's my job." Hayes looked uncomfortable but nodded. "Your funeral, but I'm staying right outside, and you keep the panic button on you at all times." The cell door hissed open with a pneumatic sound that made Kiravel flinch violently. Ethan stepped inside slowly, his hands visible and empty, except for his medical scanner. The artificial gravity felt slightly different here, adjusted for alien physiology, he realized. "Hello," he said softly, stopping several feet away. "My name is Ethan. I'm a doctor." She lifted her head slightly, and he got his first clear look at her face. Her features were angular but elegant, with high cheekbones and a narrow jaw. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, large, almond-shaped, and glowing with an inner light that shifted between silver and pale gold. They were beautiful, alien, and filled with absolute terror. She said something in her own language, a melodic sound like wind chimes, but the universal translator picked up only fragments. "Stay away. Hurt, please." Ethan knelt slowly, bringing himself to a less threatening height. "I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help." She shook her head frantically, pressing herself so hard against the wall that her luminescent skin seemed to flicker with distress. He noticed the way her hands shook, the hollow look in those extraordinary eyes, the way her clothes, a simple gray detention uniform, hung loose on her frame. Against protocol, against common sense, and against every warning he'd received, Ethan began removing his gloves. The action seemed to freeze her, those glowing eyes fixed on his hands with an intensity that made him pause. "I just want to check if you're hurt," he said, extending his bare hand palm up toward her, still keeping his distance. "I won't force you, your choice." For long moments they stayed like that. He kneeling with his hand outstretched, she pressed against the wall, watching him with those luminous eyes. He could hear his own heartbeat, the hum of the facility's systems, the distant sound of footsteps in the corridor. Then, so slowly he almost didn't notice it at first, she began to move. One pale, long-fingered hand emerged from where she'd been clutching her knees. It shook as she reached toward him, stopping inches from his palm. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, Ethan felt something like electricity in the air. Not physical, but something deeper, more profound. She touched his hand. The contact was feather-light at first, just the tip of one finger against his palm. But the moment their skin connected, everything changed. Her eyes widened, the glow intensifying, and Ethan felt a strange warmth spread up his arm, not painful, but startling in its intimacy. Then, for the first time since he'd entered the cell, she smiled. It was tentative, fragile as spun glass, but unmistakably real. The fear didn't disappear from her eyes, but something else joined it. Wonder, hope, and something that looked remarkably like relief. Outside the cell, Lieutenant Hayes was knocking on the reinforced door, probably wondering why the dangerous, alien prisoner hadn't killed him yet, but Ethan barely heard it. He was focused entirely on the alien woman whose hand now rested fully in his, on the way her breathing had slowed, on the soft light that seemed to dance beneath her skin. "Hello, Caravel," he said gently, using her real name for the first time. Her smile widened just a fraction and she spoke, not in her own language this time, but in heavily accented, carefully pronounced English. "Hello, Ethan." 3 days had passed since that first contact, and Ethan found himself thinking about Kira during every moment he wasn't with her. He'd managed to convince the facility administrators to let him conduct daily medical evaluations, officially, to monitor her health and cooperation levels, unofficially because he couldn't shake the memory of her smile. The morning sun filtered through the high windows of cell block D as Ethan approached Section 12. He'd brought real food this time, fruits, and vegetables from the hydroponics bay instead of the standard nutrient paste. Hayes had questioned it, but Ethan had simply marked it as dietary assessment for species-specific nutritional needs. "Back again, Doc?" Sergeant Mills asked, unlocking the outer door. "She's been different since your first visit. Calmer. Actually, ate something yesterday." Ethan nodded, trying to keep his expression professionally neutral. "Good. Progress." But his heart rate quickened as the cell door opened. Kira was no longer huddled in the corner. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the narrow cot, her silver hair catching the artificial light. When she saw him, that same fragile smile appeared and she rose gracefully to her feet. "Ethan," she said, his name still careful on her tongue. Her voice was melodic, with undertones that seemed to resonate in his chest. "You return." "I promised I would," he said, setting down his medical bag and the container of food. "How are you feeling today?" She tilted her head, considering the question. Her English was limited, but her intelligence was evident in those luminous eyes. "Better. When we..." She gestured between them, struggling for words. "When we touched?" he offered gently. She nodded, relief flickering across her features. "Touch. I feel your heart. Your..." She pressed a hand to her chest, searching for the word. "Inside feelings. You have no hate." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. "You can sense emotions through touch? My people, we share thoughts, feelings. Through skin." She looked down at her hands, the glow beneath her skin pulsing softly. "But your people, they fear this. They wear..." She gestured at his hands. "Gloves," he said, understanding. "They wear gloves so you can't read them." "Yes, always gloves, always fear." Her voice carried a weight of loneliness that made Ethan's chest ache. "But you chose to let me feel." He moved closer, slowly enough that she could retreat if she wanted. She didn't. "What did you feel? When we touched?" She was quiet for a long moment, those extraordinary eyes searching his face. Sadness. For the war, for the dying, but also kindness, hope. She paused, then added quietly, "It has been very long since I felt hope from another." Ethan found himself reaching out, his bare hand extended between them. "You can feel it again if you want." This time she didn't hesitate. Her palm pressed against his, and immediately that warm sensation flowed through him. But stronger now, more focused. It was like seeing himself through her perception. His genuine concern, his growing fascination with her, his desire to understand rather than judge. But he sensed her too. Fragments of memory flickered through their connection, images of a world with purple skies and crystalline cities, of her people's horror when the war began, of her capture and the terror of the past weeks. Deeper than that, he felt her loneliness, her grief for everything lost, and underneath it all, a growing wonder at his presence in her life. They stood like that for several minutes, hands pressed together, sharing something deeper than words. Finally she spoke, her voice softer than before. "My name, not just Kiravel. Full name is Kiravel Thanamor, means light bringer who seeks harmony, but Kira is good for your tongue." "It's beautiful," he said honestly. "Your name, I mean, and the meaning." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "What does Ethan mean?" "Firm, strong, enduring." He felt slightly embarrassed by the comparison to her lyrical name. "Yes," she said, with surprising conviction. "This fits you." She squeezed his hand gently. "You are enduring kindness in dark place." They sat together on the cot, her eating the fresh food he'd brought while he ran basic medical scans. Her health was improving, but slowly. She was still underweight, still showing signs of stress and sleep deprivation. "Kira," he said carefully, "can you tell me about the war, about how you were captured?" Her glow dimmed slightly, and her grip on his hand tightened. Through their connection, he felt her fear spike, but also her desire to trust him. "I would healer, like you, on medical ship when your forces attacked Centauri Station." Her English was getting stronger with each conversation. "We were not fighters. We help wounded from both sides, human and coalition." Ethan felt ice in his veins. "You were treating human prisoners?" She nodded. "War is wrong. Healing is right. This is what my people believe." Her voice grew smaller. "But when I was captured, your soldiers, they think I am spy. They think I read minds to steal secrets. Do you? Read minds? Not minds. Hearts, emotions. Cannot take thoughts, only feel what others feel." She looked at him with those luminous eyes. "Your people fear this because they have much anger, much hate. They do not want me to feel this." Through their connection, Ethan sensed her exhaustion from weeks of isolation, of being treated like a dangerous animal rather than a sentient being. But he also felt her growing trust in him, fragile but real. "What about your people?" he asked. "Your family?" Pain lanced through their connection so sharp it made him gasp. Kira pulled her hand away, the warmth immediately absent. "Gone," she whispered. "All gone. Homeworld was destroyed in final battle. I am perhaps only Veltar left alive." The magnitude of her loss hit him like a physical blow. An entire species, possibly extinct except for the woman sitting beside him. No wonder she had seemed so broken when he first found her. "I'm sorry," he said, knowing the words were inadequate. "I'm so sorry, Kira." She looked at him, tears gathering in those glowing eyes, tears that seemed to shimmer with their own light. "You speak true sorrow. I feel this from you." She reached for his hand again, desperate for the connection. "You mourn for people you never knew. Why?" "Because loss is loss," he said simply. "Because you're mourning them, and that makes it real. To me." Through their renewed contact, he felt her amazement at his empathy, her surprise that a human could grieve for her people. But more than that, he felt something else building between them, a connection deeper than species, stronger than the war that had brought them together. Ethan, she said softly, there are things about the war you do not know. Things that could help heal the hate between our peoples. What things? Hidden places. Camps where your people are kept prisoner. I know where they are. Her grip tightened. But more than this, I know who really started the war, and it was not who you think. Before he could respond, the cell door chimed. His time was up. As he gathered his equipment, Kira caught his hand one more time. Will you come tomorrow? She asked, and he heard the vulnerability in her voice. Every day, he promised. Through their connection, she felt the truth of his words, and her smile lit up the sterile cell like sunshine. As he left, Ethan realized that somewhere in the past hour, his mission had changed. He was no longer just treating a prisoner of war. He was caring for someone who might be the key to ending the hatred between their species, and who was becoming far more important to him than protocol should allow. 2 weeks had transformed everything. What had begun as medical visits had evolved into something Ethan couldn't quite name, and didn't dare examine too closely. He found excuses to extend their sessions, bringing books to help Kira improve, her English, sketch pads so she could draw her memories of home, even music from various human cultures to see what resonated with her. Today felt different as he approached her cell. The facility was quieter than usual. Most of the staff were attending a briefing about prisoner transfers. It meant they would have more time alone, and Ethan's pulse quickened at the thought. You seem excited today, Kira observed as he entered. Her English had improved dramatically, though she still spoke with careful precision. She was standing by the small window, her skin catching the afternoon light and casting prismatic reflections on the wall. Excited? Ethan set down his bags, wondering if his feelings were that obvious. She smiled, that expression that had become the highlight of his days. I can sense it from here. Your emotions, they shine brighter when you are happy. He paused in unpacking the books he'd brought. You can read my emotions from a distance now. Not read, feel, like warmth from fire. She moved closer, and he noticed she no longer hesitated or showed fear in his presence. It grows stronger each day we touch. The connection, it builds. Something in her tone made him look up. Her luminous eyes held a new depth and awareness that made his breath catch. Kira, what aren't you telling me? She was quiet for a long moment, then sat beside him on the cot, closer than she'd ever sat before. Among my people, when two souls connect through touch as we have, it creates bond. Deep bond. What kind of bond? Her cheeks took on a subtle glow, and she looked down at her hands. The kind that joins hearts, that makes each feel what other feels, want what other wants. She glanced up at him. Do you not feel this happening between us? Ethan's throat felt dry. He had felt it. The way his pulse raced when he thought of her. How her presence had become the anchor of his days. The growing desire not just to touch her hand, but to hold her close and never let go. I feel it, he admitted quietly. But Kira, this is dangerous for both of us. Because I am prisoner and you are... She searched for the word. Your keeper, your doctor, because there are rules about fraternization with prisoners of war. He ran a hand through his hair. Because if they found out, they'd transfer you to another facility, and I'd probably face court-martial. She was quiet, processing this. Then, she reached out and took his hand in both of hers. The connection flowed between them immediately, stronger now, more intimate than ever before. Through it, he felt her understanding of the danger, but also her certainty about what was growing between them. In my culture, she said softly, we believe that souls recognize each other across any distance, any difference. When this happens, it is sacred, not something to be feared or denied. Even across species, especially across species, it means the universe seeks healing. Her eyes met his. You saved me, Ethan, not just from death, but from losing myself to fear and despair. Through your kindness, I found hope again. He felt her emotions through their connection, the depth of her gratitude, yes, but more than that. Love. Real, deep, transformative love that had grown from that first moment of trust. Kira, he whispered. You love me too, she said simply. I can feel it. Every day, growing stronger. You try to hide it, but your heart speaks to mine. The truth of it hit him like a wave. He did love her, completely, impossibly, against every regulation and social norm he'd ever known. But how could he not? She was brilliant, compassionate, beautiful in ways that transcended physical appearance. She saw the best in him, brought out parts of himself he'd forgotten existed. This is impossible, he said, but his hand tightened around hers. Perhaps. But it is also real. She shifted closer until their knees touched. Ethan, the information I mentioned, about the hidden camps, about who truly started the war, I can share this with you, but not through words. Too complex, too dangerous if overheard. I must share it directly through our connection. How? Her cheeks glowed brighter. Full contact, skin to skin, for extended time. It would require. She gestured vaguely at their bodies. Closer touching. Ethan felt heat rise in his face. You mean, not mating? Not yet. But intimate contact, pressed together, sharing breath and heartbeat. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It would deepen our bond permanently. There would be no pretending after. No hiding what we are to each other. The weight of the decision pressed down on him. What she was describing would change everything, not just between them, but potentially for the future of human-alien relations. The intelligence she could share might prevent future conflicts, save lives on both sides. But more than that, the thought of being truly close to her, of deepening their connection until there were no barriers between them, made his entire being ache with longing. If we do this, he said carefully, there's no going back. No, she agreed. We would be bonded. You would feel my emotions always, as I feel yours. In your culture, it might be called marriage. But deeper. Soul deep. Ethan looked into her glowing eyes and saw his future there. The danger, yes, but also a love unlike anything he'd ever imagined. A partnership that could bridge worlds. Are you certain? He asked. About the intelligence you can share? She nodded solemnly. The location of 3 camps where human prisoners are held. The identity of the faction leaders who orchestrated the war against the wishes of the Coalition Council. Proof that most of our people wanted peace, not war. Her grip tightened. Information that could end the hatred, prevent future conflict. And you trust me with this? I trust you with everything, she said simply. My life, my heart, my people's secrets. You are the first to see me as person, not enemy. The first to offer kindness without condition. Ethan stood and moved to the cell's monitor system, powering down the recording devices, a violation of protocol that could cost him his career. When he turned back, Kira was standing too, her expression understanding and patient. If we do this, he said, we do it because we choose each other, not just for the intelligence, but because I can't imagine my life without you anymore. Her smile was radiant. And I choose you, Ethan Cross, in this life and whatever comes after. She reached for the fastenings of her detention uniform, her movements graceful and deliberate. Ethan felt his pulse racing, but not just with desire, with the magnitude of what they were choosing, the leap of faith they were taking together, as a fabric fell away, revealing the luminescent beauty of her skin. He began removing his own clothes. When they came together on the narrow cot, skin against skin from chest to thigh, the connection that flowed between them was overwhelming in its intensity. Through her touch, memories flooded his mind. Not just hers, but those of her people. He saw the hidden camps she'd mentioned, felt the location of each one as clearly as if he'd been there. He experienced the political maneuvering that had led to war, the faction of extremists who had manipulated both sides into conflict. But beyond the intelligence, he felt her love for him, pure and complete and life-changing, and she felt his, the depth of his commitment to her, his willingness to sacrifice everything for their bond. They held each other as the sun set beyond the cell window. Two beings from different worlds choosing love over fear, connection over separation. Whatever consequences would come, they would face them together. When they finally separated enough to speak, Kira's eyes were bright with tears of joy. "Now we are truly one," she whispered against his lips. "My heartmate, my soul bond." "Forever," Ethan agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted like starlight and hope. The emergency alarm shattered the pre-dawn quiet like broken glass. Ethan jolted awake in his quarters, immediately knowing something was wrong. The timing felt too coincidental. 3 days after his and Kira's bonding, when they'd been careful to maintain the appearance of normal medical visits. He dressed quickly, his enhanced connection to Kira sending waves of anxiety through his chest. Even across the facility, he could feel her fear, sharp and immediate. Something had happened. Commander Barrett was waiting in his office when Ethan arrived, flanked by 2 military police officers. The older man's expression was granite hard, and a tablet displaying security footage sat on his desk. "Dr. Cross," Barrett said without preamble, "you're relieved of duty pending a full investigation." Ethan's blood turned to ice. "Sir, I don't understand." "Don't." Barrett's voice cut through the air like a blade. "We have surveillance footage from 3 nights ago. Audio disabled or not, it's pretty clear what happened in that cell." The tablet displayed a timestamp from exactly when Ethan had disabled the recording systems, but visual surveillance had apparently continued, showing 2 figures embracing intimately on the narrow cot, their forms unmistakably intertwined. One of the night guards noticed the audio gap and decided to check the backup visual feeds, Barrett continued. Imagine his surprise. Through his bond with Kira, Ethan felt her terror spike. They were moving her, dragging her from her cell, and her panic flooded through him so intensely he had to grip the desk to stay upright. "Where is she?" he demanded. "The prisoner has been transferred to maximum security isolation pending determination of whether she used her telepathic abilities to coerce or manipulate you." Barrett's tone was coldly professional. "You're confined to quarters until the investigation is complete." "She didn't coerce me," Ethan said desperately. "Commander, if you'll just listen." "What I'll listen to is your testimony at the court-martial hearing." Barrett stood, his disappointment evident. "Ethan, I brought you into this program because I believed in your judgment. How could you compromise yourself like this with one of them?" The casual dehumanization in Barrett's voice, "one of them," sparked something fierce in Ethan's chest. "Her name is Kira. She's not a them, she's a person who's lost everything and everyone she's ever loved. She's a prisoner of war who has apparently compromised one of our medical officers." Barrett's voice rose. "Do you have any idea what this looks like? What it could do to the peace negotiations?" Ethan felt his world crumbling, but through the bond, Kira's presence steadied him. Even in isolation, even terrified, she was sending him what strength she could. "Commander," he said, forcing his voice to remain calm. "Kira has intelligence that could change everything. The locations of 3 POW camps where human prisoners are being held. Information about who really started this war." Barrett paused, his expression shifting slightly. "What are you talking about?" "She knows where our people are being held. She knows the coalition extremists who manipulated both sides into this conflict." Ethan leaned forward. "Sir, she wants to help end this. She's been trying to share this information, but no one would listen to her." "And you believe her?" "I know her. Through our connection, I've seen the memories. The camps are real, Commander. Our people are still out there." Barrett was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with the implications. Finally, he spoke. "Even if that's true, it doesn't change what you've done. Fraternization with a prisoner, violation of about a dozen protocols, not to mention the potential security breach." "Then let me prove it," Ethan said. "Let me translate for her properly with full recording. Let her share what she knows." "Absolutely not. You're compromised, Dr. Cross. Whatever she did to you, she didn't do anything to me." The words came, out louder than Ethan intended. "I fell in love with her because she's brilliant and compassionate and everything good that survived this damned war. Because she sees hope where everyone else sees only enemies." The MPs stepped forward, but Barrett waved them back. His expression had shifted to something almost like pity. "Love," he said quietly. "You actually believe you love this alien?" "I know I do." Ethan's voice steadied. "And she loves me. Whatever punishment you think I deserve, don't take it out on her. She's done nothing wrong." Barrett sat heavily in his chair. "Dr. Cross, you're going to be court-martialed. Your career is over. Do you understand that?" Through the bond, Ethan felt Kira's anguish at his suffering, her desperate desire to protect him even from her isolation cell. Her love flowed through him, giving him strength he didn't know he possessed. "Yes, sir. I understand. And you still think this was worth it?" Ethan thought of Kira's smile, of the trust she'd placed in him, of the possibility that their love could be the first step toward real peace between their species. Every moment of it. Barrett studied him for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "The hearing is tomorrow. You'll have a chance to present your case then." He paused. "For what it's worth, Ethan, I hope you're right about her. Because if you're not, you've just destroyed your life for nothing." As the MPs escorted him to his quarters, Ethan sent every ounce of love and reassurance he could through the bond to Kira. Whatever happened tomorrow, they would face it together even if they were apart. That night, lying in his narrow bed under guard, Ethan felt Kira's presence like a beacon in the darkness. Through their connection, she shared memories of her people's concept of love, not as weakness or foolishness, but as the strongest force in the universe, capable of bridging any gap, healing any wound. Tomorrow, her voice whispered. The hearing room buzzed with tension as officials from both military command and the fledgling diplomatic corps filed in. Ethan sat at the defendant's table in his dress uniform, stripped of rank insignia, while his appointed counsel shuffled through papers with barely concealed pessimism. But Ethan's attention was focused on the side entrance, where they would bring Kira. Through their bond, he could feel her approaching, fear and determination warring in her heart, but underneath it all, an unshakable love that steadied them both. When the doors opened and she entered, flanked by guards, the room fell silent. She wore simple civilian clothes instead of the detention uniform, and her luminescent skin seemed to glow brighter under stress. Her eyes found his immediately, and despite everything, she smiled. "The defendant will rise," announced Judge Advocate General Morrison. "Dr. Ethan Cross, you stand accused of fraternization with an enemy prisoner, violation of security protocols, and conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline. How do you plead?" "Guilty to the charges as stated, Your Honor," Ethan said clearly. "But I request the right to present evidence that will show these actions were justified by extraordinary circumstances." A murmur rippled through the room. His counsel looked surprised. They'd planned to argue diminished capacity due to alien telepathic influence. "Very well. Present your evidence." Ethan stood, his gaze moving between Kira and the panel of judges. "Your Honor, the defendant requests that Kira Velthanamor be allowed to testify and share intelligence vital to ongoing peace negotiations." "Absolutely not," interrupted Colonel Hayes from the prosecution table. "The prisoner is not a reliable witness, and allowing her to speak could compromise security." "If I may," came a new voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned as Ambassador Sarah Chen entered, followed by two aides. "The diplomatic corps has been monitoring this situation. We'd like to hear what the prisoner has to say." Morrison looked surprised but nodded. "Very well. The prisoner may speak, but under strict supervision. Kira rose gracefully, and when she spoke, her English was clear and precise, far better than anyone in the room except Ethan had heard before. "Honored judges," she began. "I am Kira Velthanamore, last daughter of the Veltar. I come before you not as prisoner, but as one who wishes to end the pain between our peoples." She gestured toward a large display screen. "With your permission, I will share what I know. But I must touch Dr. Cross to do so. It is the only way to transfer complex visual memories to your recording systems." "Absolutely not," Colonel Hayes objected. "We won't allow—" "Let her speak," Ambassador Chen interrupted firmly. "This is exactly the kind of breakthrough we've been hoping for." Morrison looked torn, but finally nodded. "Proceed. But any aggressive action will result in immediate restraint." Kira moved to Ethan's side, and when their hands touched, the familiar warmth flowed between them. But this time, instead of private sharing, she projected her memories onto the room's display system, a capability she'd never revealed before. The screen filled with images that made everyone gasp. Human prisoners in makeshift camps, dozens of them, being cared for by coalition medical personnel. Kira's voice narrated what they saw. 3 camps, hidden from your forces by extremist faction who wanted war to continue. Your people, soldiers, captured in final battles, still alive. She provided precise coordinates, names, details that could only come from first-hand knowledge. But then the images shifted to something even more shocking. Recordings of coalition council meetings where faction leaders argued for continuing the war despite majority votes for peace. The translation scrolled across the screen, showing clear evidence that the war had been perpetuated by a small group of extremists on both sides. "The coalition never wanted this war," Kira continued. "Most of us sought peace from the beginning. But those who profit from conflict, they made it continue. They are your real enemy and ours too." The room was dead silent as the implications sank in. Ambassador Chen was furiously taking notes while several military officials were already activating communication devices to verify the prisoner locations. When the presentation ended, Morrison looked shaken. "This intelligence, if it's accurate, it changes everything." "It is accurate," Kira said simply. "I was there. I treated your wounded in our medical facilities. I was present at council meetings where we voted for peace only to be overruled by extremists." She looked directly at the judges. "Dr. Cross risked everything to give me a voice. Without him, this information would have died with me in that cell." Ambassador Chen stood. "Your Honor, if I may speak for the diplomatic corps, this intelligence is invaluable. It provides exactly the evidence we need to separate legitimate coalition representatives from the extremist factions." "The prisoner could be lying," Colonel Hayes protested, though his voice lacked conviction. Kira turned to look at him, her luminous eyes sad but steady. "Colonel, I have lost my world, my people, everything I ever loved. What could I possibly gain by lying to you? I seek only peace and the hope that no other worlds will burn as mine did." Through their bond, Ethan felt the absolute truth of her words, the deep well of grief she carried, and her genuine desire to prevent others from suffering as she had. Morrison conferred quietly with the other judges before speaking. "Dr. Cross, your actions violated military law. There's no question about that. However, the intelligence provided as a result of these actions appears to be of extraordinary value." He paused, clearly struggling with the unprecedented situation. "This tribunal finds you guilty of the charges as stated. However, given the extraordinary circumstances and the vital intelligence obtained, you are sentenced to reduction in rank and formal reprimand, with immediate transfer to the diplomatic corps as a specialist in alien cultural relations." Ethan felt relief flood through him, echoed by Kira's joy through their bond. "Furthermore," Morrison continued, "the prisoner Kira Velthanamore is hereby reclassified as a diplomatic asylum seeker, with full protections under interplanetary law." Ambassador Chen stepped forward. "Dr. Cross, the diplomatic corps would be honored to have you join our team. Your unique understanding of coalition psychology would be invaluable in the peace negotiations." As the hearing concluded and officials rushed to verify Kira's intelligence, She and Ethan finally had a moment alone in the hallway outside. "We did it," she whispered, taking his hands. They listened. "You did it," he corrected. "You found a way to make them see past their fear." She smiled, the expression radiant with hope. "No, my heartmate, we did it together. Your love gave me the strength to trust them with our people's secrets." 6 months later, Ethan stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic station orbiting Earth, watching shuttles arrive for the signing of the Comprehensive Peace Treaty. The prisoner camps had been found exactly where Kira had said they would be, leading to the rescue of over 200 human POWs and a complete restructuring of the post-war negotiations. "The Veltar delegation is arriving," Kira said, joining him at the viewport. She wore formal diplomatic robes now, her status as the last representative of her people giving her unique authority in the negotiations. "I thought you were the last of your people," Ethan said, confused. Her smile was mysterious. "Last of the Veltar, yes. But it seems there were survivors from other coalition worlds. Refugees who heard that one of their people had found sanctuary with humans. They come, seeking the same." Through the viewport, Ethan could see the approaching ships carrying beings of various species who had lost everything in the war, but were willing to hope for peace. "So what does that make us?" he asked, taking her hand. The bond between them had only grown stronger with time, becoming a source of strength they both drew from daily. "The first," she said simply. "The first human coalition bonded pair. The first to prove that love can bridge any gap." She squeezed his fingers. "The first of many, I hope." That evening, at the reception following the treaty signing, they stood together as equals, he as the lead cultural liaison, she as the coalition's chief representative. The formal announcement of their bonding had caused quite a stir, but it had also inspired others to look beyond species boundaries toward shared hopes and dreams. Ambassador Chen approached them with champagne and a knowing smile. "So, any thoughts about the future? The coalition worlds will need rebuilding, and there's talk of joint colonies for mixed couples like yourselves." Kira and Ethan exchanged a look, the silent communication that had become second nature to them. "We've talked about it," Ethan admitted. "There's so much work to be done, healing to facilitate, and children to consider," Kira added softly, causing both humans to look at her in surprise. "The medical teams believe that our bonded genetics might be compatible for offspring, hybrid children who could grow up truly belonging to both worlds." Ambassador Chen nearly choked on her champagne. "That would be groundbreaking." "Everything about us has been groundbreaking," Ethan said, putting his arm around Kira. "We might as well continue the tradition." As the evening wound down and they returned to their shared quarters, Kira paused at the window overlooking Earth. Her skin glowed softly in the starlight, and Ethan was struck again by her ethereal beauty. But, more than that, by the strength and wisdom that made her who she was. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Everything you gave up to choose me?" Ethan moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and feeling her lean back against him. "I didn't give anything up," he said. "I traded a small life for an extraordinary one. I traded loneliness for love. I traded fear for hope." She turned in his arms, her luminous eyes reflecting the stars. "And I traded despair for joy, isolation for connection, the end of my people for the beginning of something new." They held each other as the station rotated slowly, carrying them between Earth and the stars, between past and future, between what was and what could be. "I love you," Ethan whispered against her hair. "And I love you," she replied, the words carrying all the depth and certainty of their soul bond. "In this life and all the ones to come." Outside their window, the universe stretched infinite and full of possibilities, worlds to explore, bridges to build, and love to share across any distance, any difference, any boundary that had once seemed impossible to cross. Their touch had indeed changed everything, just as that first contact in a sterile prison cell had promised. But the real transformation wasn't in the treaties or the politics or even the peace they'd helped create. The real transformation was in the simple, revolutionary truth they'd proven. That love recognizes no boundaries, that understanding can bridge any gap, and that sometimes the touch of a single hand can change not just two hearts but two entire worlds.